In this video, I'm going to be walking through the steps to install PI Coresight 2014. In the next video, I'll also show how to configure PI Coresight through the new admin page. This 2014 installation, it's different from previous installations of PI Coresight. There's some new pieces that are getting installed with PI Coresight, namely the PI Web API and the PI Index Search Crawler. And these are both used for the improved search functionality in this release. Now, a great reference when doing any type of install, especially this one, is we can look at the PI Coresight Installation and Administration Guide. And something that you'll see right away is there's this cautionary section pointing out some of the new things that we're going to be seeing as we install PI Coresight 2014 and to be aware of throughout the process. We can also see there's this pre-installed checklist which will go over the permissions needed for specific accounts that are going to be used. And there's also these server manager roles and features that are going to be required. And this is the first thing that we're going to be doing on the PI Coresight machine, so let's take a look at those. Okay, so we can see that there are different requirements and recommendations depending on the operating system. And this is something that we're going to be using when we do this preparation on the PI Coresight machine. So let's take a look at that machine. I'm here. This is the machine I'm going to be installing PI Coresight to. It's a Windows Server 2012 standard machine, which is a supported operating system. Make sure before you begin the installation that your specific machine that you're going to be doing the install has the right operating system. Make sure that your PI system and your SQL versions match the requirements provided in the installation and administration guide. You also want to make sure the account that you're doing the installation with is a domain account, and make sure it also belongs to the local administrators group. So I am going to be doing the install and I'm in the local administrators group on this machine. The first place we're going to start is with the server manager. So you can see I'm going to navigate down here and select the server manager. Once you have the server manager open, we're going to be adding roles and features. And this will launch the Add Roles and Features wizard. Now, as we go through adding these, I'm going to be doing the roles and features that are both required and recommended for this particular operating system. So at this point, I'm just going to be matching this with that matrix that we looked at earlier. I'm going to need to do the application server because of my operating system, and I'm also going to need to do the web server. The first features that I'm going to add are under the .NET Framework 3.5, and all of them I need to select. And the next one is here under Windows Process Activation Service. I'll need those three selected as well. And I'll go ahead and hit Next. Now we'll be adding the role services specific for the application server. I'm going to need .NET Framework 4.5 checked. I'm also going to need Windows Process Activation Service support with HTTP activation. These are the required, and I'm also going to add the recommended web server IIS support right there. Now we'll add the web server role services. Under the common HTTP features, the required ones are static content, default document, and HTTP errors. But it's recommended to do all except for this last one. So I have that selected. Now under Health and Diagnostics, none are required, but it's recommended to have HTTP logging, the logging tools, request monitor, and tracing. All of them are required under Performance, so I have both of those checked. Next, under Security, the required ones are Windows Authentication, Request Filtering, URL Authorization, and Basic Authentication. but the recommendation is to add all. Under application development, these first two are required, and I'm going to make sure to add the recommended ones as well. These two here and these two as well. The very last section we're going to look at is management tools. The IIS Management Console is required, and I'll go ahead and add the recommended IIS Management scripts and tools, as well as Management Service. And I'll go ahead and hit Next. So great, we have all the role services we need and those that are recommended selected. And after we've done that, you might see that I get this message up here. Do you need to specify an alternative source path? One or more installation selections are missing. Now, I've seen this before, and I know that the files that are needed for the .NET 3.5 installation cannot be found on this local machine. You'll notice that it will say that right here in this section, the server will try to get the missing source files from Windows Update. If this is not an option that works the first time that you do this, one thing is you can reference, there's a Microsoft KB article, 2734782, and it'll tell you some alternatives if you're unable to get the source files from Windows Update. So my solution, I have chosen to basically have a local copy of the side-by-side directory from the Windows operating system installation disk. And so what I'll do is down here, I'm going to specify an alternative source path. Okay, so let me take a look and make sure I have that. All right, so these are right here, and this is the path that I'm going to put in. And now I'll install. The installation of these features and roles may take some time. Great, and we can see that the installation succeeded. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and close out of this. And there are a couple additional preparation items that we need to take care of on the PI Coresight machine. One thing is to make sure that the required ports are open, and the installation and administration guide has a list of the typically required ports. So we can see here 5450 and 5457, those are typical for PI system access, but we'll also need to open a port for the PI Coresight web server. Now, which port this is will depend on where PI Coresight gets installed, and we can take a look at the sites in IIS Manager. Type IIS. Since this has just been installed, if I expand this, I'll just see under Sites the default website. And the default website is where I'm going to be installing PI Coresight 2. If you're in the situation where you're basically installing on a web server that hosts multiple sites on the same port, beforehand you'll need to temporarily change the port number before installing PI Coresight. Also, if you happen to be installing on an existing PI Web Parts or PI Web Services application server, make sure that you create a separate website that has a unique port number. And you can reference the installation and administration guide for information if you find yourself in one of these particular situations. Again, as mentioned, we'll be installing to the default website, and if I look under Edit Bindings, I can see that for HTTP, it's using the default port 80, and so I would need to make sure that port 80 is open. In my particular machine, I have the firewall turned off, so that's not something that I'm personally going to need to do, but those are the ports that you need to keep in mind when you're going through this process. PI Coresight 2014 can be downloaded from the tech support website, techsupport.osisoft.com, and I have then searched for the PI Coresight 2014 install kit. So I've already downloaded this to this machine. my install kits, and we can see that it's right here. Before I can begin the PI Coresight 2014 install, I will need to know the AF server that is going to be used for the install. My AF server, if you take a look in PI System Explorer, is CNM-AF. Another thing that I need to confirm is that the account that I'm going to be running the install, my C. Metzinger account, it has to have write access to the configuration database. And I can confirm that that does by going to Security and Database. And I can see right here that my user does indeed have the appropriate permissions. I'm going to switch back. One more thing for PI Coresight is OSIsoft strongly recommends using a custom account for PI Coresight. And you'll need to know this custom account before you do the install. I have a service account that I'll be using, and I know the service account and its password, so I'm ready to begin the installation. I'm going to right-click on the executable, and I'll do Run as Administrator. And this will install PI Coresight 2014. You can stick with the temporary folder. In my case, I like to have them unzipped to a specific folder. And that was that folder that I created, and I'll just use that one, and then I'll hit unzip. This will launch the PI Coresight 2014 setup, and I can take a look at the different pieces that are going to be installed during this. You'll notice some of the new pieces that I mentioned earlier, the PI Web API and the PI Index Search Crawler, in addition to the last one, which is the PI Coresight 2014. It is important to note that this PI Index Search Crawler must be installed on a machine that is a member of a domain. It is not supported in a workgroup environment. But I'm on the domain, so I'm not going to have any problems with that. Then I'll go ahead and hit OK. So the first of the OSIsoft MS Runtime Redistributables was successfully installed, and I'll move on to the next one. I'll hit Finish. Next, we're going to be installing the 64-bit Pi SDK. This is the destination folder. If you happen to be segmenting and having separate drives for your applications from the drive with your operating system, you might want to specify a different path here. If you only have one drive C, you can go ahead and hit Next. I actually do have separate drives, so I'm going to modify this to my other drive, which is D. I'll need to go ahead and give it a default Pi server, or as it's known as now, the Pi Data Archive. So this is the name, and then I'll hit Next. Now I'm going to do the 32-bit Pi SDK. Similarly, you can leave it at the default destination folder. I have separate drives, so I'll modify mine. Next is the Pi AF client. You have the opportunity to participate in the Pi System Customer Experience Improvement Program. And we can enter the default AF server. I'll go ahead and enter it now. My AF server is CNM-AF. These are the features. If you want to additionally install the Analysis Management plugin to Pi System Explorer, the Pi AF client, you can go ahead and install that. Otherwise, you can proceed. There's a little warning about Pi Builder. I do not have Microsoft Excel installed on this machine, so that component will not be installed. And we're going to go ahead and automatically close the application that's required. And now we'll do the Pi Web API installation. You're going to want to go ahead and choose Custom. And here you can specify the location. I'm going to keep it consistent and choose D, like the Pi SDK was installed. The Pi Web API requires space in the configuration database. This is why the user running the install needed to have write access to the configuration database. So I'm going to go ahead and connect to the AF server that I had specified earlier in the install. And I'm going to leave the default for the name of the instance to create. This is the element name that's going to be under the Pi Web API element in the configuration database. If you're going to be using the recommended custom account for PI Coresight, you're going to want to go ahead and specify this account here with the Pi Web API. I will choose a custom account, and I'm going to enter the custom account. It is important to note that the account setup here for the Pi Web API is not something that can be changed later under the Services console. In order to change this account, we would actually need to change the installation in Programs and Features instead. The Pi Web API also requires an SSL certificate. If you do not have a certificate that is available that you have from a certification authority, you can go ahead and create a self-signed certificate through the install process. I'm going to do that option, so I'll hit Create. Otherwise, if you already have a prepared certificate, you can use Select. So the self-signed certificate has been created, imported, and selected. And I'll go ahead and hit Next. If you want it to create the Windows Firewall exception, you can go ahead and do that through the install. And now we're to the PI Coresight 2014 installation. You'll need to select the website to host PI Coresight. We saw previously in IIS, I only have the default website, so that's the only option I have available, and I'm going to stick with that. Now it says PI Coresight 2014 has been successfully installed. I'm going to uncheck the Browse to the PI Coresight administration site because once I hit Finish, I'll actually need to reboot the computer. And so I'll go ahead and do that now. And we can see that the installation was completed successfully. Now that PI Coresight has been installed, there's a couple configuration items that we need to do on the machine. And I'm going to look at the application pools in IIS Manager. And we'll select the application pools. You can see after PI Coresight was installed, there's two application pools that have been created, the Coresight Admin App Pool and the Coresight Service App Pool. The recommendation is to run both PI Coresight application pools under the same account as the one that we specified for the Web API and the one that we will specify for the Pi Index Search Crawler, and to have all those under that same custom service account. In order to change the identity to the custom service account, we're going to do a right click and then choose Advanced Settings down here. And under Identity, click here and choose a custom account and set. Okay, and we'll make the same change to this one as well. Now that we have made the identity change to the Coresight app pools, we're going to open services and also make the same change to the PI index search crawler service. So you want to open services and we'll want to change the PI index search crawler. You can see that the PI Web API is using the account that was specified during the install. And again, remember that this account is not something that can be changed here in the Services console. We need to change the installation in Programs and Features instead. Also, that certificate that was selected in the PI Web API installation, that cannot be simply changed through IIS Manager. Instead, you would need to do a repair of the PI Web API installation to use a different certificate. I'll right-click and do Properties, log on, and I'll use the same custom domain account. And it will remind me that this name will not take effect until I stop and restart the service. So I'll go ahead and do that immediately. So at this point, the PI Web API, the PI Index Search Crawler services, the Coresight application pools are running under this custom account. Let's talk about what PI permissions are then needed. Let's start off with PI System Management Tools. This service account is going to need read access to several of the databases. How the permissions have been set up is I have created a specific identity for the PI Coresight service account right here. And under Mappings and Trusts, there is a mapping for that SVC PI Kerberos account to the PI Coresight service account identity. So if something connects with this account, it will receive the PI Coresight service account identity, and that's the identity that needs permissions. So I'll navigate here to Database Security, and under Database Security, the identity will need read access to PI User, PI DBSec, PI Point, and PI Mapping. Now if you have the PI World identity enabled, the access might already be sufficient if PI World has read access to everything, but if you have that disabled, make sure that it's explicitly given read access to these databases. In addition to database security, the identity also needs read access for the PI points. We can take a look at point security using Point Builder. We can see that for, say, a specific tag, in this case I'm looking at the security for sinusoid, the PI Coresight service account has read access under both point security as well as data security. Any changes to tags to add these security items in bulk are easily performed with the PI tag configurator add-in to Microsoft Excel. I'll also need to make sure that on the AF server, that service account has read access to the server, the database, any AF elements, tables, or event frames as well. In addition to the service account, remember that any users of PI Coresight will also need to have permissions to view the data. So if you're using PI mappings and the user security has already been set up data-wise, that's something that can be used and you don't need to set up any additional security. The next video will show how to configure PI Coresight and create the PI Coresight database in SQL using the new PI Coresight admin page.